transition to Dan. The first time I ever, it's odd that I can remember it, but it does stand out in my mind for some reason. The first time I ever saw you was on a YouTube video, and you were wearing a "World's Best Farter" t-shirt. I mean, father. The HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Deer Grow.
Man, it's almost food plot season, Jared, and Deer Grow is one of those products that has really changed the way that we plant food plots and the success we've seen from them.
No doubt. I've been, trying to plant food plots my entire whitetail hunting career, which is a little shorter than yours. But the minute that I started, or that I realized that I could get Deer Grow back into some of these remote plots where I couldn't get lime or fertilizer, especially in the 50-pound bag, format. Mm-hmm. So everything was changed. I could get into these spots moving forward with a backpack sprayer, and that's since escalated to these 40 or 60 gallon sprayers, and we're doing upwards of 5 to 10 acre food plots just with Deer Grow and having phenomenal success.
Yeah, and I mean, with the price of fertilizer, lime, diesel, everything this year, I mean, what better way to get in there and grow a successful food plot at about a third of the cost? Check out Deer Grow at deergrow.com. And we're back.
Hey, you.
HUNTR Podcast, episode 118. Nick, car trouble.
Sorry, Nick.
Oh. Hopefully he's getting a tow by now.
Hoping, for the best for Nick.
Yeah. He's
having a tough week.
It's been a tough week for Nick. Yeah. So
growing pains,
Yeah, car trouble.
Girlfriends, car trouble.
Yeah. So
it's okay. We're pulling for you, Nick, whenever you hear this.
He's here in spirit.
Yeah.
So it is March the 2nd. Can't believe it's March already.
Turning 30 tomorrow, dude.
Oh my. That is welcome to the 30s. I'm still in them with you.
Yeah.
Not
That's
for
what
long.
I tell my wife is no matter how old I get, I'll never be as old as you are.
I'm sure that makes her feel great.
It's true for you as well. So
yeah, I know. I got you on the receding hairline on the on the above bar.
I'll take it. Shots fired.
Shots fired. So, anyways, it's March. Man, it felt good today. It was decent weather out. A little chilly in the beginning, but it's March, and I don't know. I mean, this is kind of those months where it's better than February. Not nearly as good as we get closer to May and June, but
we've been taking full advantage of the weather. As you know, we're getting ready to open our ice cream shop next Thursday. So I'm getting putting concrete down, working with my hands.
Did a 30-acre burn.
Did a 30-acre burn. We've had a ton of showings lately, a couple listing appointments. I was I don't even know what an office looks like. I
know. I've lived in my truck.
I'm more windburnt than I have been since our November escapades.
But we have that's the one thing that's kind of wild is we've had great weather here, and I still have yet to really go on too much of an official shed hunt. Just haven't had time.
I know. I get guys text me. They're like, I only found 19. I found 30 by now. I'm like, dude, I have found 0.
Yeah. So, but I think this March is that one critical month that I think a lot of projects and scouting try to slip by too fast. So because it's the 2nd, and I don't know if you're listening to this, it's the 9th or 16th.
Soon after the 2nd?
Yeah, sometime after the 2nd. Take advantage of March, especially before green up here. I still think a great time to scout, shed hunt, whatever you want to do. But we have a special guest.
I got a segue for you.
Yeah,
Speaking of late, postseason, we've got, somebody who is probably the king of postseason scouting. Somebody who we've got a lot of requests to have. It's Dan Infalt.
Yep.
Okay. So we got a lot of requests to have Dan on the podcast. We're obviously fans of Dan. Have watched a lot of his podcasts and YouTube productions over the years and stuff, and so fairly familiar with his style. But I'm 100% sure that we're going to learn something today. This is our first time talking to Dan. We had him on just very briefly here before. So the intention of the podcast really is just to get to know Dan. I'm sure we're going to have some commonalities as far as hunting styles, maybe some things we disagree on. And so hopefully, you guys can just ingest this conversation as organically as we're going to be having it here.
Yep.
That's it.
Yeah, I think it'll be great. I mean, when you think about really honing in on, frankly, a way that a buck or a mature buck thinks, you listen to Dan speak to, certain situations that he's in or what he's thinking as he's scouting. And what I want to get in with Dan too is I know he's taken several groups on some of these post-scouting discussion. I mean, the thing is, you find a lot of people in this industry, and especially these, big buck killers, basically, they hold the secret sauce close to the chest, right? And kind of like a mystique about it and stuff. And I think Dan is one who like authentically wants to see people succeed, and I think probably when he gets into this mindset of this late season scouting and, discussing what he's seeing, it can't do anything but, admire somebody that really wants to get people involved in that and wants to show them, with a different set of eyes, maybe stuff that they walk past, often in the woods. And so I think what's going to be cool when we have this discussion with Dan is, really kind of understanding, his background and where he's come from and almost how he's got to this point. Because I think if you look at kind of the guys out there who are, having success, year over year, Dan's one of those guys. So we'll bring him in. Without further ado.
Hey, how's it going?
All right. How are you?
I'm alive.
Yeah, I mean, making it. It's you probably heard a little bit of the pre-podcast there, but when we start talking about, early March, how's that resonate in your head right now?
It's find next year's target time.
Isn't that crazy? I mean, it kind of feels like that first step away from, the end of last season towards next season. And I think a lot of people probably, if you aren't ate up with it, maybe you're thinking turkeys or fishing or something, right? But from a deer hunter standpoint, like March is that first step towards next year's deer.
Yeah. If you're not fired up right now for next year, you probably don't have public land hunting in your future for big bucks.
Yeah.
You got to get out there now, and you have to have that love for it or you'll never do good at it, Yeah.
It's a weird transition every year because it's like it's a burnout. I mean, if we're being honest, I mean, for me anyways, like by the time, December, January rolls around, I've got a few last pushes of like, I'm going to, I wasn't successful in this state or I'm going to go for it. And it's usually I push it too far at that time. I'm like, oh, dude, I hate hunting at this point. And then very shortly after, I don't know what happens. It's like over a week or two period, I lick my wounds. And, I'm just like a big buck after the rut. It's like, dude, I'm more excited about hunting than I ever will. Like freaking, let's go. Like, let me get out. I got to scout these new areas. I got all these projects that going on. And all of a sudden, I'm like behind on the next year ahead. And I have no idea how that always catches me off guard every year.
I'll get burnt out for like totally burnt out, and I'll be like, I'm done for the season. It'll be like a day left or something, and by the next day it's over. It's like,
doesn't last long.
Yeah,
just I can't hold that burnt out feeling, but I get that. I mean, you got to remember, I do 100 sits in a season, and I hold on a full-time job, and I run Hunting Beast Gear, and I run Hunting Beast, which is a separate company. And I mean, sleep is for some time in the future, like when I retire.
Yeah.
So I get burnt out sometimes, but I don't know. The hunting is more of a rebirth. You work for 15, 16 hours in a day, and getting up at midnight to go to work, and then run out at 2 p.m. and hunt, and all of a sudden you're back alive. Come out of your sleep.
That's it, man. I mean, it feels like, it's hard to drag my ass out of bed in the morning for work, but like, I'm up staring at the wall, ready to go out and, get my gear on and get in the truck to go somewhere.
Dan, can you, just for our listeners here and for us, obviously this is really our first time talking. I mean, you and I just chatted very briefly via text message, and I asked you to come on and stuff, but we don't really know you. We don't know you that well. We've seen some of your stuff as I mentioned in the intro, but like on a personal level, can you just share a little bit about like, very briefly, I know just how you got into hunting, like kind of where you're at now in your career, and some of the businesses that you're running in the industry. Just kind of give us an overhaul of Dan Infalt, I guess.
I started hunting back in the 70s. And back then there wasn't near the deer there are now. And everybody hunted. So, it was rare for deer to even in my area make it to 2 or 3 years old, But I would go out and pound it anyways. And in those days in the 70s, I mean, it was more about food and bringing meat home, and crude equipment, and just getting a deer was a big deal. But I would manage to get deer every year and more than my share. And I just kept graduating to bigger deer as it got easier. And at one point in time, a buck survived where I was hunting and got to be 2.5, and it didn't get killed, and it got to be 3.5, and I got a shed from it from 2.5, which you never found sheds because bucks got killed every year.
Right.
So it's pretty rare you found one. And then it got to be 3.5, and then I started really taking it serious, going after it, and took that on as a challenge. And I ended up killing that deer when it was 5, and it was almost 170 typical. And that was I killed it in the 80s. So I mean, the 70s is as I grew,
Yeah.
But that's still one of my biggest bucks. And I had a lot of run-ins with that buck. I even wounded it once before I killed it. And I got sheds from 2 years old on up, and that really sparked it with me. And trying to kill that buck and having such a desire to kill it because there was nothing else around like that, really started me down that path. Because that deer, I realized real quick that I was struggling finding where it was living and how to hunt it. But I learned real quick that he didn't go far from bedding. It was a relatively open area, and he would come out of where he bedded and not go far. And I didn't have any mentors. My dad didn't hunt. My brothers all went to Vietnam, and when they came back, they didn't like hunting too much anymore after that, after their experiences. And I was kind of on my own. So I didn't have anybody to tell me the bad habits of always sit in the same spot and be quiet, or rotate through stands or that kind of crap. There's some bad things because you got a learning curve and you got to learn some things that other people could have taught you.
Yep.
But also you don't have somebody stopping you from thinking outside the box. And in those days, everybody told you to stay away from bedding. Stay as far away from it as you can, because you'll blow the deer off of your properties and stuff. And when I saw the deer coming out of the bedding, I just naturally gravitated towards that. And after the season, really wanting to find that deer's antlers, I started looking around. I started finding the bedding areas and finding the antlers in the bedding areas and thinking, wow, this is where I got to hunt. So I learned all the bedding areas. And then I literally, when I ended up getting that deer, I spent a winter just learning that whole area where he lived and all the bedding areas. And then the next season, I just kept hunting those bedding areas down and having little interactions with them until I got them. I ended up getting them gun season by just taking a gun and going crosswind and sneaking into each bedding area until I shot them.
Wow.
But what it taught me led me down that path all the way from the 80s on, that I needed to be close to bedding. I needed to learn where they bedded and hunt them that way. Because if you think about it, because some of your listeners that haven't heard of me or what I do are probably thinking this sounds a little bizarre. But if you think about it, just use common sense, a deer is a nocturnal animal, so they move at night.
Right.
So there's a very small area they move in daylight, especially mature bucks. And that's why guys go so long without seeing a mature buck or getting a mature buck, is because they're not getting close enough to the bedroom. I mean, they might move, during rut 1 or 2 days in the season if it's a 5 or 6 year old buck, especially if it's got a lot of pressure, where they move long distances. But they always move around their bedding area. Somewhere in that vicinity if you can get close enough. So my whole thing has been getting right up to that edge and hunting them there. And go ahead.
Dan, one of the things that I think you hit on there, and Jared and I have talked on this podcast a lot, and it comes with kind of where we are today, but take it back to even when we grew up. I mean, I lived in the woods. I mean, and to your point, the learning curve, half the stands I hunted on, I built out of 2x4s, and I hunted the same damn stand every time. It didn't matter what the wind was. Like, you just didn't know, right? It was learning curve type of thing. As you kind of look at that stuff to where you are today, and even kind of look around to other hunters today, you kind of got to wonder, man, that learning curve and that grind that we did growing up and how we hunted versus maybe some of the new people coming in today, they're at a huge disadvantage walking into this thing.
Maybe. I kind of look at it as people nowadays are in a much better advantage than what I was. Because they're walking in with the knowledge of guys like me and stuff that are putting out there. And there's a lot of other people too that are now sharing knowledge greatly. I mean, you can go on Facebook and knowledge. You can go anywhere. You can go on websites. You can watch videos. When I was a kid, there was no hunting videos or anything.
Sure.
When you did see a hunting show, they blacked out the kills.
Yeah.
And it was just kill videos. I can remember when the Wenzels and Fitzgerald and guys first put out videos and stuff. It was amazing. It was like, I couldn't believe they were showing kills. And it was like, you just sit there and stare at that stuff. Like, wow,
Yeah.
Even though it was little bucks in a lot of those videos, but I think kids nowadays are at a great advantage. The disadvantage is there's so much else competing against hunting, and hunting isn't as much of a lifestyle as it was when I was growing up. Now people are more family people oriented, more worried about their careers,
sure,
and that's a good thing.
Yeah,
is it?
And there's a lot more big bucks to go after. So
is what you're saying, Jeremy? Like today, because of all this, the dirty word, all this content out there, all of this, is that it's more learned knowledge as opposed to like experienced knowledge. Like, so we talk a lot about, like, before all this stuff was out there, we just went out and made mistakes.
It's trial by error.
And we talk about all these encounters we have with big bucks, and we're like, man, it's because of that. That thing that happened, not only that I learned from that, but it's also what seems like is the primary motivation for the passion and the hunger that we have.
The appreciation.
Today. And so Dan, we've recently had conversations with some guys that are getting their kids into hunting and stuff. And it's like, the fear is that they're experiencing, they have so much just learned knowledge as opposed to experienced knowledge. And they're having so much success early on that there's nothing. And what's lacking there is the failure.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
There's no failure to spark that passion that's like, leads to guys like us who, in whatever age we are here, like I'm obsessed with getting better at deer hunting, and it's the failures early on, I think, that sparked that in me, and I can imagine in you too, Dan. That's
a really good point. When I grew up, hunting was so important to families and stuff that kids didn't like get catered to like they do nowadays.
Yeah,
there were no special seasons or
like
Kids Day and all that kind of crap. And I actually kind of look at that down at that and think, that's not really what hunting's about, is having a special Kids Day or whatever.
Yeah,
it's when I was a kid, you earned your way into camp.
Exactly.
You were a man when you got welcomed into deer camp.
Yes.
It was part of growing up. It was like you're waiting for that because that was like accepting manhood. Now they take these kids out when they're like 5 and get them a tag in a state where you can hunt at any age and prop them up with a rifle.
Well, yeah, you're right. I mean,
popping a Boone and Crockett, on a ranch.
That's what I'm saying. It's like when you think about that deer camp atmosphere. I mean, man, I lived for deer camp, for gun season in Pennsylvania. Like we would be all at my grandma and grandpa's house for Thanksgiving dinner, and we left for deer camp like before dawn the next day. We were there. Opening day was the Monday after Thanksgiving in Pennsylvania traditionally. I mean, my cousins and I live for that. And like, my kids are excited about deer season now, but not nearly like I was. And
even before that, there was years that you saw them go to deer camp.
Oh, and I didn't go.
You didn't get to go.
Yeah, I wasn't old enough. I wasn't, to Dan's point, I wasn't welcomed into camp yet. I was 7, 8 years old,
just
right?
a boy.
Yeah, so it was such a, you yearned for that invitation, that acceptance into that, where, yeah, Dan, like you're saying, I mean, there's the entire basically season in Iowa, a kid can go out with a gun at any time and pop one.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying there's not anything great about that. I mean, it's good for kids to get into it, but it's just different.
Yeah.
In all fairness, you gotta look at it with a little reality. The way I'm describing it is from my point of view as an old guy. And kids nowadays aren't like we were kids when we were young.
But it changes fast.
They didn't grow up in the 70s. Things changed. I mean, now you got to compete with teachers telling them that hunting is bad.
Yeah.
You shouldn't eat things that have eyeballs, and
yeah.
And when I grew up, you didn't have that. You had teachers that would stop the class and go, "Did everybody hear Dan shot an 8-pointer?"
Oh yeah.
You know,
and school was closed for the opening day.
Now it's a bad thing. Now you're the evil guy that, you know, Disney paints as the bad man in the hunting video, right?
Yeah.
So you're competing with that. You're competing with video games. You're competing with friends. You're competing with social media. Nobody had a cell phone when I was a kid.
Right.
Nobody had video games or anything else. We had 3 channels on our TV, and people could afford one TV. We had a black and white TV when I was growing up in my house, and that was it. One TV, and we had a rotary dial phone that was on the wall, but where my dad and mom sat. And if I wanted to talk to a girlfriend or something, I had to go on the phone and sit there with them listening. You know, so you had to get out and do things.
Yeah.
You could just, you know, go call a friend or something. You had to go find them.
Yeah.
You know, you had to go walk around and stuff. So hunting was big back in those days. And it was, you know, it was a bigger deal. So nowadays, I mean, if we made it too hard and you had to go 5 years without getting a deer because you don't get to hunt the premium spots because you didn't earn them yet, I don't think those kids would last.
No, they wouldn't stick.
I don't think they have the same stamina we had, but for the reasons of society nowadays.
Yeah.
Not necessarily that they're good or they're bad or anything else. It's just things changed.
Yeah.
Not for the better, not for the worse. They just changed. We can't go back to that.
Well,
that's the life that I crave, you know.
Yeah, and I mean, I worry about that with my own kids now, to where, you know, because I'm so passionate about it and I'm in the woods and they're in the woods all the time, frankly, they have a lot more success than I had at their age. And also because they can hunt younger than I was. I couldn't hunt till I was 12, right? Mm-hmm. And so I almost worry, even though I see in their hearts, I see they enjoy it, but if they have success, you know, every year, let's say until they're, you know, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 years old, like, is it that special for them anymore? Does it stick like it's stuck with? I mean, to your point, you think about that grind you did to get that buck in the 80s, that giant. I mean, you can't describe that feeling hardly to anyone unless they've also experienced. And you don't even have to describe it. You're like, yeah, I know what you mean when you say it.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Dude, it's crazy that we've done however many. This is the 118th podcast. This is the first time this is like striking a chord with me. It's like it's almost the same as like you've heard the saying, like, you know, show me the son of a great man.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and a lot of times, you know, those great men are referenced by like they built a business or they built some kind of empire. You know, in our case, you know, not that being a great deer hunter makes you a great man necessarily, although
we can all argue that
the two are pretty highly correlated. A lot of the same truths, I think, exist. You know, I mean, a lot of us, you know, cut our teeth on, you know, difficult hunting situations that made us passionate and also ultimately, you know, find a way to prevail, you know, to where we're being successful. And in the same way that, like, a great man would have built a business, you know, his son is going to reap the rewards of that. He's not going to be as passionate. I think we, you know, and I don't have kids, but, you know, Dan, do you have kids?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm thinking about them while you're talking.
So, I mean, you guys are kind of like, your kids are naturally at a disadvantage, as, you know, as the phrase goes, you know, being the sons of great men, you know, in the sense of deer hunting.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say I was a great man growing up.
There's still time.
There's something to be said there, because I think that I was too obsessed with hunting to pay well enough attention to my family, honestly. And when my kids did get of age to hunt, I think I pushed them way too hard because I wanted them to succeed and be mini me's, you know, when really they got their own lives and their own passions and stuff. And,
Dan, do you know?
My son James was
real quick, do you know Andre DeQuisto?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Very similar. I mean, when he said that,
mm-hmm.
Yeah, very, very similar story. It's kind of eerie to hear you say the same thing.
Yeah, my son James, when he was growing up, I pushed him really hard. I mean, he was a small kid at 12, and I would have a lone wolf stand, because that's all we had to hunt mobile back in those days, and 5 sticks on it and in a pack, and have that on his back. And me and him would go out in the swamp and hunt 3 miles back, and I'd be pushing him to go through, you know, waist deep water and through muck and stuff, and then come out of there in the dark, and half the time we get lost. And to me, that was just hunting. That's what I did.
Yeah.
Every day was a struggle, and I pushed him too hard. Now he was very successful. He only shot 3 deer in his life, but they were all bucks, and the smallest one was about 100 inches. The biggest one was in the 160s. But as soon as he got into girls and stuff, he didn't want to hunt no more, and he started telling me it's just too much work. It's not fun. You want to go on an adventure, want to go on a outfitted hunt or something, and just go have fun as dad and kid. Let's do it. And to me, it was like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah,
that's not me. But so I pushed him too hard, and my son Dan was the same way. Dan Jr. I mean, I just pushed him to the point where they didn't like hunting no more.
See,
I'm hoping James comes back around. He still likes hunting, so hopefully. But I'm a lot more mellower now, and I had my kids when I was young.
So in a kind of a weird 180, Dan, my worry with my children who are 7 and 10, about to be 11, is that I make it too easy for them. And it, I struggled, and I embraced it, man. I loved it. I loved the trial and error. Like I said, I lived in the woods to the point where I get so excited about it that I almost tee it up too much for them. And it's because I love the scouting.
Well, you didn't have a choice. When you were coming up, it's not.
No,
like,
there wasn't a choice.
It's not like you chose the hard way. It's like
that was the way. It was the only way. Like we ground. We did deer drives. I mean, we put miles on. I mean, as a 10, 12-year-old kid, I knew most of the mountains in Pennsylvania better than adults, just because I had a passion for it. Now, no offense to him, but if I drop my 11-year-old in the woods and say, hey, find your way back home, he'd be lost in 10 seconds. Yeah. And it's just, so it's kind of weird when you say that, Dan, because I grew up in that hard scenario. My dad was very much, he supported me, but he was like, man, you need to, he'd say, hey, you go out this way and I'll meet you back here at dark, and I learned so much that way. And now I get so excited about it to get my kid, but now I feel like I make it too easy. And so my fear is kind of similar to your children, that they will lose interest because it was too easy as well. Like, I think where's the happy medium?
I think the happy medium is you just got to let the kid be the kid. And,
yeah.
If they want it hard, they'll let you know. If they want it easy, they'll let you know. And if they don't want to hunt, they'll let you know. And you got to just let them be them.
Yeah.
I think if you just be a dad, that in a lot of cases, setting the example, they'll come around.
Yeah.
But anything you push or you try to force just makes things worse.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So transition to Dan. The first time I ever, it's odd that I can remember it, but it does stand out in my mind for some reason. The first time I ever saw you was on a YouTube video, and you were wearing a "World's Best Farter" t-shirt. I mean, father. Okay, and this ties into our conversation actually immediately because of the dad thing here. But you mentioned earlier about guys promoting, like, you never go into these bedding areas. Like, it was sacred ground. It's not how you hunt. You get on the field edge, whatever it is, the food source, the pinch points. And I'm turning 30 years old tomorrow. So I grew up, bone collector into Midwest whitetail. I mean, Bill Wenke was a really influential, character for me, essentially. And he was a huge advocate of like super conservative, hunting. And, I took that, I think, hook, line, and sinker. And so for years, I didn't have any encounters with mature bucks. This would have been, I don't know how long ago was that, Jeremy?
Mid-2000s?
Yeah.
Mid to late 2000s?
Around 2010 he was speaking.
Yeah.
So like 12 years ago, I would have been like, whatever, late teens, 20s. And I just wasn't having the success. I've got some great access, some great places to hunt. And I just was really struggling with it. I came across, I don't remember how I came across it, but I came across a video called Hill Country Bucks. Mm-hmm. I can't remember the guys that produced it. I honestly don't even. Were you were in it? Okay. So,
I can't remember.
Well, okay. I produced two videos. I produced Hill Country Bucks by my company Blood Brothers, which
that's what it was. It was Blood Brothers.
I left Blood Brothers, and then I started a new company because the guys I worked with were idiots. So I started a new one called Hunting Beast, and then I redid all the videos.
Okay.
But I still sell the Blood Brother videos too.
Okay. So I bought the DVDs. I remembered you like either being a part of that or somehow that exposed me to, I was like, this is the Dan Infalt guy. And then I found you on YouTube and so you can share with us maybe after, like when you started doing the YouTube stuff. But that was like my first taste. And like, I've progressed a lot since then, but that was my first exposure to like the first time I'd ever heard like finding a deer's bed, like a leeward ridge, and even considering the idea of like what they can see from their bed and how to hunt a bedroom. And obviously a lot has changed since then, and you've gotten a lot of exposure the hunting public guys have come up, and there's been a lot of people who have promoted that style of hunting. But that was my first taste, and the world's best farter has stuck with me to this day. That may be the title of this podcast, by the way. So.
And my daughter bought me that shirt. My family would buy me the most obnoxious shirts they could find and dare me to wear them in the videos.
That's funny.
It stuck.
So Dan, when obviously, thinking at some point you decided, hey, people don't know how to hunt like this, and I'm, you're obviously ever educating yourself every encounter, but you said, I got to get out there and I've got to figure out a way to kind of start getting people to talk about this.
Yeah. When I came up with the DVDs, like the one you were talking about, my first one was Marsh Bucks.
Yeah. I watched them all. Farm Country Bucks, Hill Country Bucks, Marsh Bucks. Yeah, I watched them all.
Marsh Bucks, then Hill Country. And then I evaded the guys that I was with and started the new one and the whole series.
Mm-hmm.
But, when I started those videos, I had a passion. I wanted to put those out so bad because I wanted to, I just looked at the whole industry as everybody had all these myths about hunting,
mm-hmm.
and they're all wrong. I mean, they're hunting like, they're watching guys like kind of like you reminded me of it when you were telling your story. They're watching guys like Bill Winke or, Lee and Tiffany. And I like all those guys. Don't get me wrong. They're great people. I've met most of them.
I say in Iowa.
But, Right. But they got some huge ranch.
Yeah.
You mentioned D'Acquisto before. He owns a square mile. That's just highly managed property.
Yeah.
They've got these tree stands over food plots everywhere, and then they leave the sanctuaries alone and they kill big bucks. I hunted D'Acquisto's property. I had 150 plus inch deer come by me in 4 days. I mean, that isn't reality. But people watched it on TV and they think they can do what they're doing in our situation.
Yeah.
Now, I could go hunt all ranches if I wanted to. I could go do that. That's not my passion.
Mm-hmm.
That's just like killing tame deer to me. To me, it's the desire to do it on the same equal level playing field as everybody else. Go out and kill a deer that anybody else could kill. Go figure that deer out. Figure out where that exact buck is living and hunt him down and kill him. And to me, that's a huge challenge. And when you do it, there's such a feeling inside when that deer actually gets up where you expect him to be bedded and walks into you and you shoot him out of the only tree in the million trees that are on that public land that you could possibly have killed him out of. Yeah. It's just a great, overwhelming feeling, But that's the thing is that can relate to everybody watching.
Mm-hmm.
You can't, the trouble is when a guy's young and he's, in his formative years, he's watching the TV and he's thinking that all I have to do is hunt like this guy.
Yeah.
Well, deer don't walk out like that on public land into open fields or to, food plots or out in the middle of acorn flats. I mean, you might get one or two trophy bucks in your lifetime hunting in that manner on public land.
Mm-hmm. I
So,
don't even think you see them in
system,
most private lands like that. I mean, we watch those videos, and like if we're hunting in Pennsylvania, like deer don't do those things that I'm seeing in Iowa here in Pennsylvania.
Well, and that's why I said it's not just ranches. It's Iowa. So Jeremy and I have gone out and hunted, Kansas and Illinois, like some of these premier, whitetail states. We don't do outfitted hunts. It's mainly we'll either do public or we've had some leases and stuff. Yeah. And it's night and day from, we're down here, South Pittsburgh, southwestern Pennsylvania. It's like, it's not like they're just doing what deer are supposed to do, or what we think they're supposed to do. Like, we grew up watching these TV shows. So that's what they do. They walk out and here's the scrape. They crush the scrape. They don't do that here. You know what I mean? It's like, one out of every 100 or 1,000 sets or whatever that they do that. And you go out to these, whatever it is, there's obviously a multitude of scenarios, but it's either highly managed or it's private land or it's
just like low pressure states.
It's low pressure states, and it's all of a sudden it's like, oh, these deer are doing what deer are supposed to do.
Yeah. And I mean, people get offended by it, and I don't mean it disrespectfully, but it's like, if that's how I hunted all the time, I would be successful like that as well. And I don't mean that in a mean way. It's just like, if you and I go to Kansas, and even Kansas where we hunt public land, I've killed multiple 155 plus mature deer. I don't want to say it's easy, but it's a hell of a lot easier than where I hunt.
That's a different thing, too.
A big part of it is you got to hunt where there's a lot of deer.
Yeah.
If there's a lot of targets, your odds go way up. I mean, you get into some of this public land, and I'll have people tell me, where I'm hunting this property, where should I hunt? And the first thing going through my mind is, how do you know there's a trophy buck on that property?
That's exactly it.
I got to go find, and where I live, I got to go look at several properties that are big properties to find one target buck.
Yep.
So it's not like they're everywhere, but if you go down to, like, even with, like you're saying, Iowa, I mean, I've hunted down there too and had spectacular results compared to Wisconsin, in southeastern Wisconsin, where the pressure is high.
Absolutely.
You get down there and see 10 Pope and Youngs in a day, and you're like, holy crap.
Yes.
And that's not even that's land anybody could go down and hunt.
That's the first thing I said about Kansas. When I went from Pennsylvania and sat in Kansas, and like the first 3 days, I was like, holy shit, this is what deer hunting is supposed to be like.
Yeah.
That's just how it is. But I think, Dan, to your point in terms of the finding that buck, and Jared and I talk about this a lot, obviously you can't kill him if he's not there, right? And so when you see a lot of these people, talking about, oh, this is how you should hunt, this is how half of these people are hunting, like, for us in reality, we're hunting ghost. Like, I mean, that deer, we're reading sign or whatever, or maybe we got a picture of him last year or whatever, but ultimately, like, it's not a guarantee. It's not a guarantee that deer's even in the same area, or if he's even made it through and is actually alive when you're hunting them.
Right.
It's heartbreaking too, man. I'll throw my dad under the bus. He's the guy. I mean, he's an eternal optimist, and so many people are. And it's like, the reality is, like, technology at one time, those guys were just, they were just, nobody could out hunt them. Man, they're just going to grind it out, and, one is going to pay off for them. Technology, I think, has evolved, especially with, like, trail cameras and especially cell cameras. It's like, we know if they're there or not. Like, it's, and yes, some slip through the cracks. Like, things do happen, deer will travel and stuff, but it's like, it's not so much a mystery anymore. It's like, hey, you're wasting your time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so at this stage, it's like, it's just, you want to see somebody like that either lower their standards or or go hunt somewhere where you can kill the deer you're trying to kill.
Dan, when you're seeking out, because it sounds like you kind of think like Jared and I do, where you basically are after, like, a particular deer. All right, you hunt a particular buck. Maybe not in all cases, but a lot of times you're trying to narrow in on that specific deer. Let's even start with now, right? It's March. We talked about it. What's your first step towards next season? It's March. What are you looking for?
Okay, so I mean, like, right now, one of my big interests is a very large 10-point that's been around for a couple seasons now, and he's getting pretty big, and I want to kill him, and I'm trying to pinpoint exactly where he lives, because I just got a few pieces this last year and really decided to move a little more towards him as I started getting some trail camp pictures and putting them in places. Well, while scouting, we pick up one of his sheds. Now I got a little more of his area, where he's wintering, and I'm going to go out and I'm going to scout on the areas where I think he's at, where I got pictures, where I had sightings. I'm going to narrow in on the bedding areas in that area, the places he could be, and I'm going to cross out all the places where people pound and people hunt, and look at all the stuff that gets kind of overlooked, and I'm going to make some pick out some setups in those spots, and then I'm going to hunt through them this coming fall. And I'm sure I'll tweak too, and I'll, move a little bit based on what I see. But I'll get all that done. I'll have that whole area set up, and I'll also go look at other deer that I hunted that are worth looking at. I'll look at other properties, and I'll just do a ton of scouting, and I'll have setups coming up. So generally, when I'm hunting in the fall, probably 60, 70, maybe even 80% of the time, I'm hunting a specific buck. There's times when I'll go into an area and hunt it and just give an area a try, especially if I'm waiting for a certain wind in a different property to access it. And I'll go in there and give it a try and just kind of get a feel for the property and see if there's any good sign in there, if there's something big running around. And then I'll scoot back, or I'll see something and then I'll start diving in there a little deeper, or drop some cameras or something. But that's how I kind of go about.
When you're hunting those, let's say that hunt through in the fall, from out of the gate, how aggressive are you? Are you like every hunt trying to get a little tighter, a little bit more aggressive, or are there times where you're just confident in what you found and you just kind of go for it?
I'm a fan of going right after it for day one.
Yeah.
I think the less aggressive you are, the more you're slapping that deer in the ass saying, game on, I'm coming for you.
Yep.
So I go right in for the kill right off the bat. I think sitting 100 yards too back is a huge mistake that people make. I think a lot of people are afraid to dive in there. And I think if you're not every now and then kicking that deer out of its bed, seeing its tail go and swearing and saying you'll never do that again, if you're not doing that every now and then, you're probably not getting close enough to actually kill it. Especially with, you get these deer that are 5, 6, 7 years old on public land that's heavy pressured. Those deer do not get that age by wandering all over the place. You got to push the envelope right on top of them. So as soon as you let them know they're being hunted, they're going to do one of two things. They're going to move, or they're going to get very nocturnal and be very edgy. Even when they do move in daylight, they'll come out staring in trees and looking around and stuff. They don't get to be that age by being stupid. So my method is to be very aggressive, go in for the kills right off the bat. I mean, I might hunt an area down or hunt it in a method where I'm not going to walk past a good spot to get to a better spot.
Right.
If they're both pretty good spots, I'm going to hunt that first spot first and then the second spot second.
Yep.
But I'm going for what I think is going to be results oriented right off the bat.
Do you have a high percentage of first sit kills?
Yeah, the majority of my biggest bucks are first sit. Now, that's not necessarily the majority of my bucks, but when you look at my top 15, which are all 5 years old or older, when you get into the 2 or 3 year old bucks, it's different. That's more, rut-based bucks and stuff like that.
Right.
But I really haven't. I've killed, maybe 4 or 5 mature bucks in rut. The majority of my mature bucks have come in early season. I mean, the last really big one I shot was, I think he was 7. He might've been older. I know he's at least 7 based on trail cam pics and some sheds.
Yeah.
But, that buck was at least 7. I shot him the 5th day of the season in mid-September.
Oh, wow.
Just technically, because I'm curious, what do you call a first sit? Because are you hunting? Are you hanging and hunting every time?
Yeah. So I did 100 sits last year, just over 100. I think I sat the same tree.
That's a ton.
I think I sat in the same tree 5 times.
Well, I think what's interesting, Dan, is, and again, maybe it's because of some of the, let's say, and I don't mean in a bad way, but some of the media we were influenced by as we grew up through the 2000s and later 2000s is, I also kill the majority of my bucks on first sit. However, the majority of my first sits might not be until October 20th, right? It's more of a strategic wait for the right front on a scrape, whatever. Whereas, and Jared and I have talked about this, part of the disadvantage of some of this technology and stuff is I've talked myself out of so many hunts early season because I'm like, maybe he's there, maybe he's not. Should I really push in? That's why I asked how aggressive you get and when even.
I have a lot of people tell me that they wait to sit their prime spots till the prime time of, the week of rut.
Mm-hmm.
And I always laugh at that because I have spots that are prime opening week. As a matter of fact, I probably got a lot more that are prime opening week than I do during the rut.
Mm-hmm.
But I got spots that are prime during the rut, and I got spots that are prime, first week of October.
Yeah.
I got spots that are prime in December. You hunt where the deer are at that time. And people got this idea in their mindset that that's where the deer lives and he's there all the time. It's like these bedding areas I looked at, doing camera studies and hunting these things and keeping records. It's pretty obvious to me that most bedding areas have peak activity around a 2-week period. Some a little longer, some a little shorter, but there's for the most part, it's a 2-week peak period. And if you can pinpoint that, you can be very successful. So the buck I was just talking about, the one I shot at this last season, the season before, which was my last buck. I went buckless last year. But that buck, I've been trying to shoot that buck for years. And he lived in an ocean of cattails. And there's some dry spots in there with just brush. And it was just impossible to hunt. You can't hunt off the ground because the cattails are too high.
Right.
There's no way to get elevated. And he's just not coming up onto high ground. There's 3 trees you can hunt up on him. And I kept going out there and trying to figure it out. How am I going to get this thing? I know he's living here. And I was trying to figure out ground setups and stuff and spots where the cattails are low. And, then you risk, hitting them too high.
Right.
You know what I mean? But it was just trying to find that window of how I could do it. And I went out there in the spring. It's been a couple of years now. I went out there in the spring when it was frozen and walked all over the place and really looked at it. I came up on this little high spot in the cattails that had some grass and some willow brush. And you couldn't see it from a distance because the cattails kind of blocked the willow brush.
Mm-hmm.
And there was no trees in there or anything to see from a distance. And you couldn't really pick it up on the aerial. It just blended in. But I got into this willow brush and there's just beds everywhere. There had to be 50 beds in there. And all the willow brush is tore up with rubs. And the first thing I did when I looked at that is I said, well, what time of the year is a deer here?
Right.
That willow brush loses its leaves in early October. So I'm thinking that all those deer that bedded there and rubbed those trees, and the rubs were all faded, but they were from that year.
Mm-hmm.
That all had to be, in September into maybe early October. And we open in September right after they come out of velvet.
Yep.
So I'm thinking that 2-week period is going to be right at the beginning of the season. So I followed the trail out of those beds and went through some deep muck and towards some private ground. And there was some brush there. And there was one little tree about as big around as my leg that I could skimmy up and get about 8 feet off the ground and just high enough to shoot over the brush. And I was able to remove some buckthorn branches and make a hole each way in the spring and have it ready for me come the next year. So then the other problem is to get there, you had to go through this bedding area.
Right.
So I came out there in July and I went through between knee and waist deep water and made a trail through the cattails with a machete in a way to go all the way around this without, up against a land border and around without trespassing and get back to that tree. And I waited for the first brisk north wind, which is what I needed for there. And I wanted a good wind because I had to kind of sneak past this buck to get there.
Right.
Very first time I went there, I got to that tree, went up that tree, and I had I was there about 20, 30 minutes, not very long at all. And a doe got out of a bed 15 yards from me. So I think I set my stand up pretty quiet. Got up, wanders off. And then another one gets up in front of me, directly in front of me. And she was about 25 yards in front of me, right at the edge of the cattails, a little grassy area. And I can see that dogwood or the willow brush in front of me where the buck bedding was. And you can see the heavy trail going going to it, coming to me. And this doe gets up and she starts feeding her way toward me real slow. And I hear something coming from that willow brush through those cattails. And you can't see it because the cattails are like 8 feet tall.
Yeah.
She hears sloshing coming. And now I can't see it, but in my mind, I'm imagining it's my target. But this doe is coming closer and closer, and she eventually gets into the brush underneath me and pops out right underneath me where it's a little bit open because the tree I was in, or the bush, was shading the ground. So there's a little bit of an open spot there.
Yep.
And when she gets there, her head spins around. She locks on my stick on the tree. And she's looking at it, and she looks at the next one up, and then looks up at me. And from that view underneath me, I'm kind of skylit, and she's staring at me. And she blows and bolts back the way she comes, which is the way that the other animal's coming from, and stands over by that trail that right where it pops out in front of me, and just starts blowing and blowing and blowing and blowing. And she blew like 50 times. She finally stopped and stomped off. I could hear whatever that was going off the other direction.
Yeah.
So I gave it one more sit just to keep him honest, in case it didn't spook him too bad.
Right.
And nothing came out, and then I left it alone. Because I'm a firm believer, if you oversit that stuff, it'll go dead.
Yep.
So I just left it till the next year.
Oh, wow.
The next year, I waited for the first brisk north wind, and I went back to that spot, which was day 5 of the season. And I got to that tree, got up the tree. This time, no does got up. But I heard something come out of the dogwood, or the willow brush, and start coming through the cattails. And I'm imagining it's him, and I'm hoping he's going to pop out. And I just watched as he did. Popped out right where he was supposed to, walked right underneath me, and I ended up getting him. So that's the typical hunt for one of those trophy bucks that you're after for years. And you can see the excitement in that, can't you? I mean,
oh yeah, man.
Just to kill that animal that you're looking for and have that one pop out, you know.
How do you know? Like you said, you gave him one more sit to keep him honest. I mean, is it just a gut feeling of when it's too much?
Yeah, for me, what I've seen is, and take this for what it's worth, for over the years of hunting these spots and stuff, I've seen that most of these deer, once you hunt one of those bedding areas, they kind of just go away for a while.
Yeah.
And if you go and you hunt it again and again and again, they probably come back through there. They live in that area. I think they smell you. Now, I've had these spots where you have a spot where I'll go in every year, have good bucks come through every single year. Then one year somebody will fumble around and find a spot and put up a stand and cut a trail to it, and they'll hunt it like 5 or 10 times, and that spot will just go dead. Yep. Rubs will go away, the deer will go away. Eventually that guy will go away, and it'll take like a year before those deer start coming back.
Sound familiar?
Yeah, we have a public spot in Kansas that is that exact way, and unfortunately we were ready this year and it was disturbed.
Yeah.
The HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Hoyt Archery.
Dude, where would we be without our Hoyt bows?
Probably shooting crossbows.
or a Matthews, yeah.
One and the same.
Yeah.
But in all seriousness, we love being Hoyt guys because you stand out. When you're in this room full of other people that shoot these other types of bows, I feel like the Hoyt guys just stick out.
Dude, it's just a legit bow. I mean, especially that carbon riser, man. I mean, I know that they've got several other aluminum lines as well, but for me, I'm shooting that RX5 in the carbon model. They've since come out with the RX7, and I can't tell you how much I love being a Hoyt guy amongst a sea full of Matthews guys. So we're out there, I think, proving them wrong, shooting 80 pounds and killing stuff.
Hey, man, if you want to get serious, get Hoyt.
Yeah, well, the spot I just told you about. And here's something that people don't realize with guys like me. I put all that stuff out there for everybody.
Yeah.
I did the video on that buck I just told you about. I mean, everybody that lives around me knew exactly where I was hunting by looking at maps and studying. I walked out there yesterday. I haven't even gone back to it because I had everybody sending me messages that they've been hunting that spot for years. They're there too, and that's their spot too. I see them there.
Right.
Remember, I had to cut a hole out of there to be able to shoot out of it.
Yeah.
So obviously nobody had ever hunted there. I mean, you leave a scar in a tree when you hunt there. I mean, I went out there the other day walking around. It's the first time I've been there since I shot that deer. And the whole tree is scarred up from sticks.
Yeah.
It's cut limbs and
well, that's what I was going to ask, Dan. I mean, because I mean, you see this progression for you, and I'm not trying to play the negative person here, but we were talking Johnny Stewart and Steve Shirk, who is here in Pennsylvania, does a lot of public land on the Big Wood side, and it's evident. I mean, because of the information out there, a lot of these places get hunted harder than they used to, because, you know, back in the day, like you said, there was nobody talking about this stuff. So there was nobody educating you to say, hey, yeah, go look at this, or go find these clear cuts, or go find these marshes. Now we are, right?
Well,
we're a society that's putting that content out there.
And not just the content, or like whatever it is, the YouTube, the Instagram channels, but like literally the mapping softwares. I mean, ultimately is what's making these places able to be found. You know, these places that before the only place to find it was like, you know, hopefully the sign's still on the tree, or, you know, maybe there's the game commission put out a map or something like that.
Now the old paper map.
Now it's literally, let me pull this up. It's like, oh, there's a checkerboard on every single place I can hunt in here.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, and to your point, I mean, finding those bigger, mature trophy type bucks, it just, with that in play, just makes it all the more harder and probably more satisfying when it all happens.
You know, when you find one of those really good spots, you can go back and you can kill big bucks there over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
I've got one spot where I killed a good buck 8 years in a row on the same tree, same day, opening day of gun, 8 years in a row on the same tree. I got another spot where I killed 4 good bucks with the bow. And I put buddies on 2 or 3 of them. So, I mean, we killed a lot of them there. And, you know, those spots, people find them, they go bad or whatever. But my point is, when you shoot a real monarch, one of the 6-7 year olds, I never get one of those repeating spots. That's the first one I get.
Yeah.
Then after that, then it's the 2 or 3 year olds.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? Those big ones, I mean, by the time they get to be 5 or 6 years old, in any kind of pressure situation, they just always seem to find some niche nobody's looking at.
Yep, I agree.
New niche. It can be someplace you hunted your whole life. They'll be in some place where you're not looking.
Yep.
And you find that spot and hunt them down, you know?
Yeah. And those
right.
bucks just...
Like a dad's buck this year, man. We've talked about that a couple times here.
Yeah. They just don't like to be around other bucks either. I mean, they're loners, you know, a lot of it. And, you know, that they're just, like, to your point, they're finding those nooks and crannies. And sometimes they're not the harder place to get to. They're just the overlooked place.
Yeah. The place where people aren't.
Yeah.
You know, anybody that doubts it, think about the biggest buck you ever shot. Almost, 90% of the people you ask that to, it'll be the first time they ever went to that spot.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, well, that's why when I asked you about the first time sits, most of the bigger bucks, this Pennsylvania buck over Jared's shoulder, it's in the low 60s. I killed on the mountain, was a 5-year-old buck. I kind of knew point A to point B where he's bedding. It was late October where I thought he was going to come hit a scrape, and it was a hanging hunt. I had never even laid eyes in the exact area I was going to be. I just knew about where I needed to be. And as I eased in there in the afternoon, it was eyeballing what I thought was the right spot. And, you know, it just happened to work out. And I think that, at least for me, I feel just, I don't know, a sense of confidence. That first sit in a first spot with the wind right, just, I don't know. I feel like everything could align so much better. The more I sit in a spot, the less likely I feel like I'm going to succeed.
For me, I'm probably a little different cat than most people, but I got to feel like I'm in the game, like in the chess game. You know, I got to be playing with that buck. I can't be just rotating through stands or sitting a food plot, or, I mean, it's not saying I can't sit over a food plot, but I'm saying it has to be, you know, I'm hunting an animal, I know where he's at, kind of thing, or at least I think I do, and I'm playing a game.
Yeah.
You know, for me, just going out and rotating through stands, like if I get to a spot and I have no confidence, I can't hunt. I'll move on. I'd rather go home.
You're just wasting time.
I would rather scout till dark.
Yes.
Hunt in a spot that I got, you know, no faith in.
I agree. I mean, we talk about it all the time. The feeling of being in the game is all I search for every season. Like, I mean, it's great if I shoot something, but if I'm in the game every sit, if I feel like I'm in the game, that's all I can ask for.
Yeah.
Right.
Even grasping that is I think speaks to, you know, just experience as a hunter. I mean, there's a lot of guys that never develop out of that. I mean, they just hunt stands till the day they die, you know, or they give up hunting or whatever. To start to grasp like what deer are doing, you know, is I don't know, man. There's just, as we're talking here with Dan, like so many of our conversations, Dan, I don't know if have ever watched our podcast or whatever, but it's like we have a lot of like repeating conversations, and a general theme is, you touched on one earlier, you can't kill a deer if he's not there. But it's also like we've tried to express in words like whatever that transition is from like deer hunting, right? In general, like I'm hunting stands, I'm hunting deer, to being in the game, and to like picking up on what, deer or a specific deer, or a couple of an age class of bucks are doing. And it's like, that's hunting, to start to pick up on those patterns and to like manipulate the things that you're doing to try to like to do specific things, to realize the deer is not just, I'm hunting deer. I'm hunting a real specific animal that's out there, and I'm like, I can envision I've got information from sheds or from trail cameras, from sign, to be able to it's a real thing. Like it's a very tangible thing. Mm-hmm. I think at this point, as Jeremy and I are growing, like in our hunting careers, it's like that's what we're embracing, is like the fact that we're learning those things, and we fail more times than we're successful, but the fact that it's real, that it's tangible, we're not just deer hunting in general, like that I think is what's fueling our fire at this point.
I feel, to the confidence era, I feel less confident when I'm just moving into an area to hunt deer, hunt bucks. Like, okay, there's a couple 4-year-olds and maybe a 5-year-old in an area, and I'm just in there hunting them. Like, I feel way less confident because, I mean, now there's multiple bucks that, frankly, I've got more mistakes that likely are going to happen with multiple bucks moving through an area versus when I've narrowed it down to one buck, and I don't care about any other deer. I don't care if I see any other deer. I don't want to be around any other deer. I'm just that deer. I feel way more poised to succeed because I can focus on just him.
Yeah. It's a blessing.
You think about
blessing and a curse.
The act of mobile hunting, moving from spot to spot, like I like to do.
Yep.
When you rotate through stands, or you have set stands you go to, what are you learning?
Yeah.
You hunt that stand 20 times, you've hunted that stand once or 20 times, it's the same thing.
Same thing.
Every time you move, you learn a little something. You learn about the deer movement, how they're reacting to you. That whole moving around and trying new things and setting up new spots and stuff, you learn a lot about your equipment, you learn a lot about yourself, you learn a lot about the deer. A big part of it, I think, in hunting with other guys and going out with them and stuff, is guys get in a comfort zone.
Yes.
And they don't want to go into some new property they've never been to, and be 2 miles out and it get dark, get lost coming out.
No.
They're stressed over finding their truck or what's going to happen.
That's life anymore. People just want to be comfortable in life.
Yeah. The more you hunt mobile and stuff, the more you get out of that comfort box, the more it becomes comfortable.
Absolutely.
You got to make that uncomfortable comfortable. Like me, you could just drop me in the middle of a woods. It wouldn't even faze me.
Yep.
I don't care where I am. I'll find my way out.
Yep. I agree.
That's just because you do it enough that you no longer have a fear of it,
Yeah. I almost feed off of it. When you put me in a new spot, my senses are probably on overload because I'm trying to pick, it's new, right? I'm trying to identify things. I'm trying to learn it. I'm trying to pick it up. Even when I'm in an area that I'm confident in, if I've been in that area before, I know what to expect. I know what's here. I'm still paying attention, but in a new spot, especially when you do these hanging hunts, and I don't know when we kind of hit, like there was a point in time where we kind of just said, man, we got to be mobile to kill these deer. If we're not mobile, like we are not going to get on these deer. We're not going to be consistently in the game. And I think when you start to just, you go into an area because it just seems like that's probably where he's at, and you just start, you literally, from the moment your feet touch the ground, you may not have an arrow knocked or whatever, you're hunting. You're hunting that deer to figure out where that position is. Like your X marks the spot in Kansas or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
It's a different mindset. And I would assume that most hunters never put themselves in that position.
All right. I mean, look at how I do my challenges and stuff. I specifically seek out places that are very hard to kill a deer.
Yeah.
Like you go to mid-Michigan, or you go to, the UP or something, places where it's a difficult task. And I use that as a challenge because it's the hunt. It's not the buck. It's the challenge. And people say you can't do it. That's what makes it a challenge.
Yep.
I mean, going and hunt one in the zoo doesn't make, you kill a 250 incher inside of a fence in a pen that's 20 by 20. Is that a challenge?
No.
You might have a bigger buck, but that's not the challenge.
Yeah.
So for me, it's more about that whole adventure. And, if you took me back to, say, 20 years old, and I told you about a buck, I'd tell you about killing it and the size of it and how it looks on the wall. And if you talked about a buck I shot recently, I'd tell you about the hunt, and I'd probably find myself telling you what I went through to kill it.
Yep.
Because that seems to be more of the adventure to me now than the killing,
Yeah.
And maybe there's got to be a balance there, but it's definitely a part of it.
Mm-hmm.
A part of it is what you put yourself through, what you're up against. And, that's what we're really out there. We're out there for an adventure.
Yeah.
And obviously we hope we succeed, and we hope we can outdo everybody else. And, if you don't have that in you, you're lying.
Yeah.
But you want to go out there and you want to succeed and be all you can be and get it done. But there's something about overcoming the obstacles and pushing yourself to the limits to do it that you don't need to do that, but there's a feeling of accomplishment when you achieve that. It's kind of like the weightlifter who busts his ass his whole life and then goes to competition and wins. He did it because he busted his ass.
Yeah. Yep. I think what's interesting on that too is that you have to be, and I know you mentioned it, earlier, you have to be willing to kind of eat your tag too, right? I mean, if you're going to put yourself in that situation of killing a specific buck in a challenging setting, you can't expect success all the time. Like, you have to be comfortable with, hey, I might go this whole season, be worn out at the end, and still be sitting here with this tag in my hand.
Yep, I did that this year.
Yeah.
It's not too often that I go a year without a buck, but this year I wounded two. And it's a bad season. But then again, I got to hunt the whole year.
Yeah.
One of my biggest hunts to me, one of my most memorable ones, was in 1990. I hunted the whole season trying to get this 11-pointer. It's not even one of the biggest bucks on my wall. It's just a nice buck. But for that time frame in my life, it was a good buck. And that buck, I hunted him all the way to the end. And I ended up shooting him on the very last day of the season. And it was something like 20 below zero. And there was these wind chills that were crazy, and nobody was even supposed to go to work. And I was out there hunting and ended up killing that deer. And to me, that was just so great to do it on that last minute. I got to hunt the whole season.
Yeah.
And I don't know. To me, that was an adventure. I mean, going out there on the first day, like the buck I shot 2 seasons ago, that moniker I'd been after all those years, it was like, well, what do I do now?
Yeah.
I can go on travel trips and stuff, and I like the adventures of going to other states and stuff. But there's something about doing it in your home turf too, in front of all your neighbors and friends and everything too.
Oh yeah.
It was just like I was done already.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in Pennsylvania, we're 1 buck state. One of the, I don't know, it was like second or third buck I killed with my bow. I think I killed it the first week of October. So it was probably 7-8 days into the season. And I remember once I did that, it was like, well, now what? Because at that time I didn't go anywhere else. Like, I didn't hunt anywhere. Like, it was the earliest I've ever filled. I was used to grinding it out through, the late season.
You're just living vicariously through of all of us at that
point.
But
the hard part is, and I mean, even my dad, people hunted, but they just weren't ate up with it like I was. And so I would find myself when rifle season came in, I was up, I was dressed, I was planning drives, I was, because I just wanted to be back in the game. And I was tagless, right? I was weaponless, but I just wanted to be in the game. I wanted to feel some sort of success to be back out there. And, I think we talk about people and they're like, well, yeah, but the goal is to kill the deer, right? And it's like, yeah, but I don't want to be out of the woods either.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I found myself trying to help all my friends get deer.
Exactly.
And, you find out that the ones that are serious don't want your help. They want to do it themselves. And the ones that aren't serious don't really want to go through what you go through to get a deer.
That's exactly what it is.
Catch-22.
Yeah. Well, you talk about that a lot because, you've got a very good camaraderie group of guys that you hunt with. And there's a certain expectation for you because how laid up you are with it of, frankly, helping them in terms of where to go, where's this buck, what should I sit,
Yeah, it's complicated, just because of family dynamics and stuff. But ultimately, that feeling of, I mean, dude, that's why, you and I have our friendship is and a lot of it's based around deer hunting. It's like, dude, it's hard to find people who are as passionate about the same thing you're passionate about. I mean, there's not a whole lot of them. I've talked to a lot of deer hunters, and there's a couple people, but you and I have, found this mutual passion, and it's like, dude, it's like, that's awesome. I hope
it's kind of unspoken in a weird way. You just know when somebody, you talk to somebody and they're like, okay, this guy's he's really a hunter. He goes after it, he gets in the game, and you just kind of have that, I know I appreciate that.
There's so few people like that in life. I mean, dude, if anybody, whether it's in deer hunting or just in business or in life, I mean, if you can find somebody who is that shares your passion and truly wants to see you succeed, and that you guys can get fired up about. I mean, dude, I can genuinely say if you and I weren't something happened, we weren't together anymore, I wouldn't like deer hunting as much.
Mm-hmm.
It's this is a big part of what fuels it. I mean, it should be.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. Deer hunting is the camaraderie that comes with it. I don't think any of us got into deer hunting because we wanted to make friends, but along the way,
yeah.
It's become one of the more important things about it, and now you with your kids, and that's, we got all these adventures ahead of us and stuff, but
I think
not to get sentimental on you.
No. But I think the difficulty is, and Dan, you made a good point, and this is one I struggled with, is I look forward to deer camp every year. It was the moment I left deer camp, I was waiting for deer camp again. Where I'm at now and kind of the way I hunt, it does not match deer camp style. In terms of, people flat out say man, you got to stop passing these bucks, or you got to stop. It's just, I don't know why you're out hunting so hard and passing all these deer. I would have shot that one. I would have shot this one. And it's, my mindset.
The format is different.
Yeah. It just doesn't.
Dude, we still what I was just saying, we still have deer camp year round.
Oh yeah.
It's in a very different context.
Different format.
You and I don't go out and we don't wait all day to do this one thing, and we're not doing deer drives anymore. But the camaraderie that existed there still exists, on a much broader scale. It's via text a lot of times, or video calls. It's in different states, and
it's awesome in that way. But there's also a depressing aspect to where not everybody is ever going to feel the way maybe the three of us do.
Right.
About it.
Every hunter thinks a little different and has a different idea of what hunting is.
Mm-hmm.
Every single hunter does. And the trouble is, every single hunter thinks that everybody thinks like them.
Right.
And it's just not necessarily the case. And what I found over the years is, every time I run into somebody that I think is like-minded, and you think they're a hunting buddy or something, they're really not. I mean, you can be great buddies,
mm-hmm.
but when you hit the woods, I mean, I need to be alone.
Yeah.
I need to go out and do things my way, because everybody's got different ideas, and everybody's got different thoughts and stuff. And really, it's so hard to find a hunting partner that is just like you. And if you guys got that, that's freaking awesome.
Well, and I don't say
for the most part, you get somebody who's a little jealous of you being a little more successful.
Sure.
Or you get somebody who
there's definitely some of that.
doesn't want to put into work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And sounds like you got who's it, Nikki there? I got Ricky.
Yeah.
Ricky's car is always breaking down.
Yeah.
Yes.
His chair is always empty.
Yeah. Yeah. It's we're
And I don't mean to make it seem like Jeremy and I are we got some pretty stark differences.
Sure.
Across the board. Not just
mm-hmm.
in hunting, but Jeremy and I have been working together for 8-9 years
mm-hmm.
at this point together,
mm-hmm.
and we've. I think it's because of those differences that we, work so well together.
Frankly, if we were the exact same hunters, we wouldn't hunt.
We'd
well
hate
together.
each other.
Well, we wouldn't hunt well either together, because I'd be you'd be like, I'm going here, and I'm like, well, that's where I'm going.
Right.
Meanwhile, we have just different mindsets of how we do things, but it works because we also appreciate the different view. The end result is still, we are after a mature deer in the experience.
Well,
how we get there, it may be a lot different,
Yeah.
but we're still after the same thing.
And ultimately, I think the passion and the appreciation for the animal and the sport is like that is the same, or that's what we long to see in other people.
Yeah. Well, Dan, you and Joe hunt a lot
pretty
together.
boring world. What's that?
I said you and Joe hunt a lot together, right?
Yeah, we used to.
Yep. And
Joe doesn't hunt with us anymore. He didn't like the way that people would find his spots on videos.
Really, when you guys hunted together, I mean, what did you see? You know, on the same page? Were you guys again after the same goal, just doing it around different ways?
We're pretty much on the same page usually.
Yeah.
We would usually scout together, but we only hunted together when we did like the challenges
and stuff. Yeah.
Otherwise, if we hunted together, it was because I was tagged out or something, then I would throw him a bone or something. But
gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, because I think when you again, especially as bow hunters, it's solidarity at the end of the day. I mean, you're hunting, you're out there. I mean, we've done it. Like we've had cameramen in the tree, and frankly, I hate it with a passion. Terrible. Like, I mean, it's, I'm trying to control my own breathing and movements, let alone worry about what the hell somebody else is doing in the tree with me. And I think people see that and they're like, oh, filming your hunts has to be so good. Man, I bow hunt to be by myself, to get away, to be with myself one-on-one against this buck. To have to worry about somebody else stepping on sticks the whole way into the stand, I can't handle it.
Takes away from it.
I do better on hunts if I'm completely alone. I don't got anybody else with me.
Absolutely.
I don't have to worry about if somebody's thinking I'm supposed to be at the truck or some, or what's going on over there, or you know what I mean. I just want to concentrate on what I got going on. And get out when I get out, and get in when I get in, and not have any outside factors. That's what I like.
I mean, I think I've shot maybe 2 bucks in my entire career with a camera guy, in the tree or near me in another tree. Like it just doesn't, it doesn't work out for my style.
Yeah.
And we've tried it. It almost to the point where we forced it. And, Dan Jarrett and I've talked about it. It almost takes away from the fun, that you're trying to force this film and capture in the stand. Like I've been very successful self-filming. It's difficult and honestly I like it, but it's just me and that's all I have to worry about. It's still a pain in the ass to carry camera gear in and do all the stuff, but it's a lot more in control. I must become a control freak in these stands like this because you want that one little thing that could screw it all up. All not just that day, like all the work, everything you've put in to figure out this deer, one thing. And so, no offense, but some of these camera guys we've taken in, they're just sloshing along, or we had a guy
catching Old Spice in the shower,
washing down with Old Spice in the shower before, and we're like, "What the hell are you doing, man? Like, come on! Like, we have one chance to make this thing happen."
We had to let a cameraman go back in the day. The crime was that I found Old Spice in the shower. We took him on a mule deer hunt. I come out and I was like, "What the hell is this?" So we're on a freaking damn deer hunt here.
Oh man,
there ain't no Old Spice.
Well, and I say that too, Dan, because when if you think about that kind of cameraman access, frankly, if you know somebody that is as mentally sane of a deer hunter as you are, they sure as hell likely don't want to be toting a camera unless they're already tagged out. Right? They want to be hunting.
The best I've seen is when 2 guys that are like-minded take turns.
Yeah.
One guy's a cameraman, one guy's a hunter, and the next day they switch. But the trouble with that is it's hard enough to kill a mature buck in a season when you hunt all season. Now split your season in half.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I mean, again, if you're planning on the days, like you said, I need this stiff, north wind brisk to make this happen. How many of those do you get in the first 2 weeks of the season?
Yeah, how are you getting a cameraman in that bush?
Yeah, exactly.
My own ass in that bush.
Yeah, it just doesn't.
Most of the trees I'm shooting them out of in these marshes. The reason there's no other hunters going in there and those bucks are living there is because they're living where there's no trees. So I'm literally hunting out of a bush. I mean, there's been times when I pull 3 pieces of dogwood bush together and pull the strap real tight to make a tree to hold my stand up so I can get high enough to shoot over the cattails.
Wow, that's impressive. Yeah, but I mean, again, at the end of the day, you do what you need to do to get it done.
Right.
I mean, You can't look at the situation and say, well, no tree, can't kill them.
Right.
Like, I mean, that's just, it's not.
You got to hunt them where they're at. I mean, people always tell me, how do I hunt them off the ground? How do I do this? How do I do that? What if I can't find a tree? And you think, oh my God, if the buck lives there, you got to hunt him there. Figure out a way.
Yeah.
That's what you got to do, is figure out a way. It should be bothering you to the point where you're thinking, how can I get in there? And it's a mental game. It's back to the chess game.
Yeah.
What do I got to do? What move do I got to make this happen?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that, again, to your comment about the comfort zone, and again, it's in life, but people just don't want to get out of it.
Mm-hmm.
They're content. And I think that's and basically an angry word anymore. If you're just content.
Well, dude, hunting's hard.
It is.
I mean, I've thought, walking to and from hanging stands and stuff, it's like, it's not every day. I mean, even me, as much as I love it, and it's like, I do our off-season scouting and stuff. Hunting is hard. I mean, it's like in the dark, climbing a tree. Like, how often do you do that outside of deer season?
Yeah.
Not very often for most people.
No.
If they made me work that hard at work, I'd have quit years ago.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah, I mean, there's only so many summer days that I want to go pulling ticks out of my butthole. I mean, it's just but that's what people say that, like, even with March, right? I mean, I've talked to guys and they're like, "Oh, what are you doing?" I'm like, "Man, I'm thinking about if I'm gonna go here, I need to shed hunt here. I really want to see what's down in this bottom. I haven't had time to get there." And they're like, "I don't understand how you're thinking about deer right now." And I'm like, what else am I going to do?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, we often say, and I don't mean it in a weird way, but it's like, what do you do if you don't hunt? Like, and it's just because it's our mentality so much, but seriously, like, think of like the amount of time that we put into all year scouting, planning, the actual hunting and sits in the stand. It's like, what would I do if I have no idea. I have no idea what I would be into. Probably not good stuff would be the answer.
Yep.
So, Dan, around home or where you're doing most of your hunting, what constitutes, we were talking a bit ago about a successful season. What kind of deer are you trying to target? Like, what's possible up there?
Well, I'm always trying to shoot mature bucks. That's what I'm hunting.
What do you call a mature buck?
5 or older, 4
5 or older.
Yeah, somewhere in there. I think 4 or older is probably better.
4 or older.
Way of saying it. But a lot of these deer I have history with, and I know them to be older. But those are my target deer. That doesn't necessarily mean I'd pass on a, Pope and Young buck that came walking in.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a kind of opportunistic, a little more so nowadays than I used to be.
Yep.
But I can't find myself targeting, 130-inch buck or something. I just can't. It's not in me. I might know where one's coming out a lot or see sign of one or something, and I'm just not going after it. I'm going after the big ones. And if a guy wants to shoot mature bucks, if that's his goal, which I think is just about everybody's, the last thing you want to do is get in a sloppy habit of deer hunting, because they're two different animals.
Absolutely.
You'll never shoot a mature buck hunting deer.
Yeah.
But if you're willing to settle for a deer, you'll shoot plenty of deer hunting mature bucks.
Yep, that's it. And that is the hardest thing to get through someone's head, because they truly believe, they're like, no, like I'm hunting, that's the buck I'm hunting. And it's like, no, because if this deer comes by, you're just as happy to shoot that deer. If this deer comes by, you'll shoot that deer. Like, it is a complete and frankly, it's mentally exhausting to go after a specific deer for the entire season. I mean, you want to talk about wear on you, and most people would lie to say, well, I thought about giving up on this deer and going after this deer. If you truly commit yourself to seeing, I mean, it's just exhausting.
Yeah. Dan, how many?
I mean, for the right deer, I might commit myself for an entire season, but I mean, usually there's several that I'm hunting.
Yep. Which I think is an advantage. People talk about public land being disadvantaged. I think an advantage of public land is also because of the different places. You can potentially bounce from different places or have multiple deer set up. If you're hunting a 40-acre private lot and that's the only place you're committing, I mean, odds of you being on a mature buck are probably not great.
Right. I'll always hear these guys that hunt private land will say, there's no way you can hunt the way you do and hunt those deer down and just keep moving spots and not kick that deer completely out of the area. It's like, I'm not locked to 40 acres.
Exactly.
I can go wherever that deer goes. I just hunt that area down. I'll get on them. And those deer don't go as far as you think.
Yep.
But when you're on that 40, they just go across the line. You're not getting pressure
and you're done.
over there.
Yeah, you're hunting one stand.
Exactly.
You're hunting this stand, and when he crosses that line, you're out of the game.
Yeah,
game's over.
When I look at 40 acres, it's pretty likely I won't find one stand spot. If it was a private piece, I might find one or two.
Yep.
But even on public land, I mean, it's seldom in a 40-acre place I have two spots.
Yeah.
They're usually spread out more than that when I'm looking at where mature bucks would bed and where they would live. And these guys put themselves on one property like that, and they really dwindle their chances.
The HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Stealth Cam.
Dude, where would we be without our cell cams?
I would definitely be divorced at this point.
Yeah, I hear that.
I mean, the fact is I spent more time checking cameras than I actually did hunting prior to cell cameras. Now, at least, my wife can enjoy me being in the comfort of my own home, buried in my phone, checking those pictures.
Yeah, 100%. And dude, when it comes to trail cameras and definitely cell cameras, reliability is, I think, the number one thing that we're looking for. Stealth Cam just has a long reputation of reliable cameras, and ultimately that is the most important thing to us. They have to work.
In terms of reliability, there's not a better camera on the market than Stealth Cam, whether you're talking about the Fusion X, the Reactor, or the DS4K Transmit. And most of them are under $200.
Stealthcam.com. Check them out. Dan, how common are those deer that you're hunting, like in those areas? Like how often are you coming across a 4-year-old or older buck?
Well, that's a hard question to answer because it varies. So my area has really good genetics. So there's some good mature bucks, but there's a lot of mixed in private land. There's some pieces nobody can hunt. There's, you know what I'm saying? But there's also some vast public areas that always hold mature bucks, but they're very hard to hunt. Mm-hmm. And that's usually what I seek out. I live in a very populated area. I live right between two major cities, Madison and Milwaukee. And we have the city of Jefferson, the city of Oconomowoc, the city of Watertown. I mean, towns and cities all around me, and a lot of hunters. So some of the places I hunt, where I shot that buck I was telling you about earlier, when I told you the story of coming out of the willow brush, that parking lot that you got to go in to hunt that spot, generally in rut probably has 8 or 9 cars in the parking lot. So there's usually like that particular property, I think, is 2,300 acres.
Oh, wow.
And it's usually about 5 or 6 mature bucks that live on it, but it's almost solid cattails property.
So it's generally pretty good habitat, and it sounds like there is public land, quite a bit of public land up there. Yeah, because 5 or 6, 4-year-old or older bucks on 2,300 acres is not bad.
Yeah, depends on how you look at it.
Yeah, I think the huntability.
I mean, that's not every property. That's that particular property. You can get over to another property the same size, and there might be one.
Yeah,
that's particularly a better property. You get further in western Wisconsin, which is only a couple hours from me, and I hunt over there a bit. Well, then you might get 6, 7 of them on a property, and it's more hilly and it's easier to hunt.
Sure.
But there's a lot less pressure, and that's why there's more deer over there.
Well, and I'm just comparing it like to where we're at here, south of Pittsburgh. I mean, dude, to go and find 4 or 5 4-year-old bucks in 2,300 acres probably ain't happening.
No.
On most of our public land, but I don't know that the habitat is as good either.
It's not.
We don't have these cattail marshes. Like we have big timber.
We don't have a lot of ag land either. Ag land,
Right.
It's just not good soils. It's rocky soils. And I mean, we do have some. I mean, I've killed several, but it's spotty.
Yeah.
To get in there. Dan, would you say that like on that property you're talking about,
2,300 acres is a big property too.
The cattail, I mean, the huntability of that property for most people, I think, would be almost, I don't know if they would just overlook it or pass, right? I mean, because they look at that and they're like,
No, there's a lot of people that hunt it, but they hunt the woodlots.
Right.
So I would say in that 2,300 acres, there's probably about 150 or 200 acres of woods.
Okay. And so they're
most
just
of it's cattails,
jamming into that wood.
All the hunters are in those woods.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's where all the pressure is. So obviously the mature buck, unless he's caught following a doe, probably is not in there.
It used to be a lot better than it is now. It used to be there'd be 20 mature bucks in that area.
Wow.
If you go back to about 2000, I mean, actually the hunting there, if I'm honest, used to be as good as like having a lease in Illinois or Iowa. But we had CWD come through. And
I was going to ask you that.
They killed massive amounts of deer and lowered the population. And they're doing everything they can to keep that population from getting back up, despite what hunters want. But there is a lot more pressure now. It's changed dramatically. It used to be if I kayaked out to an island or walked to a very remote spot, I'd get lots of action. I'd have it to myself. And now there's beast stickers in the back of all the cars in the parking lots. There's non-resident plates. There didn't used to be. And there's a lot of pressure now. And most of the pressure gravitates to the most remote spots, the hardest to get to spots. The good pressure. I mean, people that know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Pressure. But I still have the spots that are, right alongside the road stuff that are pretty good.
You're just getting too good at your job.
People really give a hard time believing in the spots by the roads, but I do very well at those spots.
Yeah, they get overlooked. Mm-hmm. It's such a funny thing because prior to this kind of, I don't know what you want to call it, this revelation and push to these remote spots and stuff, right? I mean, everybody was, you saw, pumpkin orange along the road. Like everybody was right there. Now,
you know what you never saw though is you never saw people go to the parking lots because like a lot of this you can't hunt.
Yeah,
just pull off the side of the road and hunt. You have to go to a parking lot on the road. So especially when the road just drops off in the water.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Yep.
So guys that go to the parking lots and when the parking lots would be at the spots that have the nice easy walk-in access through the woods, and literally you got to go into that woods, circle around, and come back to the road 200 yards down from the parking lot in between parking lots. And then you got a spot where nobody goes. And that's where I kill a lot of those big bucks.
That's crazy.
Dan, how do you feel about, I'm not sure how to ask this question. Like, you're obviously in the business of like, or you've kind of built a career or a name for yourself on like exposing, how to hunt some of these public lands and stuff. And, just, putting in a spot like how you've been successful. I don't know how long you've been doing that, at least 10, 15 years, maybe more. Like at this point in time, like with the hunting experience that you're experiencing right now, like how do you feel like about that? You know what I mean? Is it like, are there regrets that you're like, man, that's somebody else would have done it if I didn't do it? Or
it goes both ways. It's like this. I take a lot of pride in helping people.
Yeah.
And I love to see people grow, but you also see the dark side too. You see the people who are particularly following you just to find where you hunt and find your spots. Mm-hmm. I mean, I can tell you right now.
Does that happens a lot?
It happens a lot.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hunter etiquette. It's not there.
I could know where you guys are hunting and know you have a great spot. The last thing I'd want to do is go there because number one, that's not a chess game. That's just taken from somebody else.
Sure.
Number two, I don't want to compete against you. I don't want to hunt the same spots you do because now that takes away that one time a year kind of thing or the first sit kind of thing. Yep. And now you're wondering if that guy's in your spot. So I don't want to hunt where a beast hunts.
Yep.
I want to try and find those new spots. So I'm always looking around for new spots. But to me, that just adds to the challenge when you have a lot of guys out there because you just got to figure out what they're doing different.
Yeah.
Those bucks are still there or I wouldn't be hunting there. The sign's there, the picture's there. You got a buck. He's living there somewhere. Somewhere there's a niche that people are missing.
Yep.
That's what you got to find. Those bucks have a knack for finding the areas that people don't go. And what people don't realize is they can smell where people don't go. Your scent stays in there for weeks.
Yeah.
Maybe a month, where a deer can smell where you've been. So when he's going into an area and there's no human scent around at all, that's where he's going to hang. So they find those little niches. And if people looked at it more like, instead of looking for deer habitat, what they have in their mind and they've been taught through TV and watching farm hunts, what deer habitat should be, if they get that out of their mind and they just try to think about where don't people go. And if I were in there and I was hiding and all those hunters were after me and there were soldiers trying to kill me, where would I hide in there where nobody would find me? Mm-hmm. That's where your buck's probably going to be. That little 5% of the land where nobody goes.
There's no baiting in Wisconsin, is there?
No. Mm-mm.
So I mentioned we're south of Pittsburgh. I hunt a lot. In fact, my family lives in eastern central Ohio. There's not a lot of public land over there either. But it's like, trying to relate to the conversation here is like, man, it's like if a deer can be killed, he will be killed is almost what it seems like. And I attribute a lot of that in the state of Ohio to baiting. And how it overlaps with firearm seasons, particularly, youth firearm seasons, and the fact that we now have cell cameras. You'll see a common situation is, and there's nothing wrong. I mean, this is done within the law. I mean, this is fully legal stuff here, but a kid can go out, or even a guy can go out and hunt a corn pile, or any kind of bait that's had a cell camera on it, for weeks or as long as it takes, I guess, from 100 yards away with a straight raw cartridge rifle. It's almost like, how could you not kill that deer every year? And unfortunately, those are your 3-year-olds, more often than not, but absolutely mature deer get killed on those, a lot more than, people will admit. But it's tough. It's kind of depressing because it's like we're watching, and this is even on private land, because I mentioned there's not a lot of public. It's like, even goes back to, I was asking you, like, what is the goal? Is it, what is a mature buck? It's different everywhere you go. It's just like, we hit phases of depression, I guess you could call it, and it typically is right after gun season, because it's like, man, anything that had a chance, like, they just got killed, with a rifle over a corn pile. It's like there is no chance.
Mm-hmm.
So the baiting thing, I guess, was the root of my question. I'm just
I don't care if people bait, because I look at it like, if that's their thing, that's their thing. I wouldn't want somebody to go after what I do, but it's not my thing, and I think that I'm glad it's not here. The trouble with it is when it does get into a place, it gets rooted into traditions.
Yeah.
And then it's impossible to take away.
Yeah.
Well, it's not.
We watched that happen in Michigan. They tried banning it, and they just about had a war.
Exactly.
It's not my thing either, Dan. But unfortunately, and like, so if you have 2,300 acres of public land, there's a good chance, some of those deer are far enough in there that they're not getting baited out to the exterior. But like where this is happening here, like in Ohio, it's like every deer, they're just going corn pile to corn pile. And I know quite a few guys, myself, I'm one of them. It's like, I don't want to hunt over a corn pile, but I know almost 100% of the time that, if you don't beat them, join them type of deal. It's like, they're going to get killed. They're absolutely going to. And even if you put bait out, they're still, what makes your corn pile better than somebody else's corn pile? It's just the baiting thing is something Jeremy and I've been talking about here for the past couple of months that I just, man, I really struggle with. And frankly,
I don't think they'll all go to the bait. I've seen baiting situations, and I certainly don't think that all deer go to the bait.
You don't think?
Nope. Mm-mm. I remember I used to work with some guys in a machine shop, and they would go up to the UP and hunt in Michigan, and they always hunted over bait, and they always made fun of me and said that I hunted down here in the cushy land and how hard it was up there, and real hunters hunt up there, kind of thing. And they kept pestering me to go up there with them, and I went up there with them, and they had some private land, but it was all wooded, like nasty stuff.
Yeah, big timber.
And they'd been hunting it for generations, and I went out. It was bow season, and I was going to go scouting, and they had a map in the cabin, and the map had some spots marked on it. And they said, okay, this is Tom's spot, this is Mike's spot, this is Joe's spot, and don't go near those spots. That's where we got our bait or whatever. You can put your pile wherever you want. So what I did is I went and I scouted the perimeter of the swamp, and I found some really good sign coming out of what looked like bedding. And I walked the whole perimeter, and there was a few good spots. And I set up in one of them, anywhere near where they were. And that night I shot about 125-inch buck. I think it made Pope and Young by an eighth. It was right on the number. But up there, that was a really big buck.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember them freaking out. That was the biggest buck they ever shot on that property ever for all those years. They'd never seen it, but they didn't run cameras either. But they had never seen that buck. They never shot anything even remotely close to the size of that buck. And I got kicked off the property permanently the next day when I shot a bigger one. It was the first 2 days I ever hunted Michigan, and I shot 2 Pope and Youngs in 2 days, and they're bigger than anything that ever been shot on that property. And all they did was sit baits.
Yeah.
Those deer probably would have been killed on baits, but they probably had bad interactions at those baits early on that taught them. Deer are good at learning from their mistakes. I mean, if they get shot at on baits, or they start learning that hunters are there, when they get mature, they'll learn to stay away from them. And there'll be some deer. I'd agree with you. The majority of them do get killed with those baits, but there will be some deer that gets an age point and a smart point where they won't go near that bait.
I think there's I agree. Yeah, we're on the same page with that. I think that the weather ultimately will dictate. I mean, I think that there are some cold weather days that them deer they can't talk. There's nothing else for them to eat. They have to go to it, right? My dad killed a 5.5-year-old, his biggest buck ever. It's 165.5-inch clean 8-point this year. And it was the day after Christmas when we had that crazy cold front. You remember it was like negative 40 degrees. He killed that thing like in no man's land, just like one of those areas. It's like there's nothing else there. So I don't even know why the deer were there, other than he had a ground blind and a corn pile put out there, and it was negative 40 degrees. Killed it with a bow.
I guess I agree with that. You put a foot of snow on the ground, or the right conditions, and they're going to come in.
Well, they have to. They're going to die.
They might come in the dark. They might check the wind.
Yeah.
I think. I don't think. Well, if they're sitting back with a rifle 100 yards, I mean, then it's pretty easy.
Right.
But I mean, you with a bow tight. I don't know that it's a cakewalk.
It's absolutely not,
because they're setting it up, and it'd be the same thing as if you walk out in your yard and there's suddenly like a box full of money sitting in your driveway, and you'd be like, "What the heck?" And there's like a blind next to it. They know it's a trap.
Yeah,
right.
They know that stuff better than we do. Well, Dan, we really appreciate you spending some time with us this evening, man. It was
it's overdue. It was nice to get to know you a little bit here tonight.
I mean, just Jared and I started this podcast really to seek out people, who are just as passionate about deer hunting and everything around it as we are, and obviously watching you over the years and produce content and how you hunt, and just frankly, man, and not to like put you on a pedestal, but just how you carry yourself around that stuff too. We kind of opened it pre-podcast. I know you've been doing some of these kind of postseason scouting classes, and we've talked about it before. I mean, there are people out there that'll just cherry pick that and take spots and take advantage of it, but I think for you to share your knowledge to people and to give them a different view on some of the things that you see as you walk through these areas, man, that experience is just priceless for people. And whether you're doing it on YouTube or, breaking down a hunt, I mean, all I can say is we appreciate it because we know that you're in a way almost forfeiting that spot, right? I mean, by just really going into the depth of detail that you do, you're sacrificing that spot for yourself in order to educate a lot of us on that experience. And, that's really what I think is such a good part about what we have. Yes, there are some bad things out there that are just, in a bad way, corrupting or ruining what we have and what we're so passionate about. But, I think in that sense, man, it's, thank you.
And it's impacted probably. Well, we'll tell you. I mean, I told you my first experience was with the hill country bucks. And that was like a turning point. In my deer hunting career. And so I can only imagine. The number of people that have had similar experiences and stuff. And so we're grateful for that.
How's the hunting been?
It's amazing that DVD. Still, we sell dozens of those a week.
Oh,
still
I bet, man.
They've been selling since they're they were first put out.
Wow.
Yeah. Well,
hopefully we'll sell some after this podcast.
I was going to think about the alternative, though. Frankly, I think some of those things. I mean, you mentioned, Fitzgerald's, and we know Barry and Gene Wenzel very well. I mean, when those guys started doing bow hunting October whitetails and stuff, it was like, years before I was even into that game. But then the moment I caught onto it, it's like, man, like, where is this stuff? And it's because it was so different than what I was exposed to or what I was used to. I think that's what makes it so cool. And I think that's why you probably are selling those, because people see some of the things that's coming out now, and then they're like, well, I'm not real sure. Where those same thoughts and mindset and tips and tactics are evergreen, right? They're applicable today as much as they were back then.
Really in hunting, there's only, a handful of unique people who are just themselves.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what's been great for me, is that I'm just me.
Yeah.
You can't change me. But you mentioned the Wenzels, they're like that. They're just themselves.
That's it.
It's who they are.
Yep.
And everybody else out there is a bunch of followers.
Yeah.
They cop, and the real success in hunting or anything in life is to be unique and just be yourself and not try to emulate what everybody else is doing. Just think outside of the box and be who you are, and that's what I've always been.
It's awesome, man. Well, we look forward to many more Dan Infalt videos and breakdowns and making us think about why we do the things we do in the woods. To me, that is the priceless community, or call it a deer camp that still exists, is even though we all might not be in the same room talking about it, when things like that are said or resonate, you kind of just nod your head, because you're thinking in the same direction, or you're just like, Dan's got something there that I didn't really think about the last time. And that's what's so cool. I mean, we rag on social media and stuff a lot because of the negativity and the way that it's taken out of context. But things like YouTube and the way that, guys like you have been able to use that is why it is still a great asset to the hunting community. And, hopefully someday all the good outweighs the bad, and, we can only go from there. So
appreciate it, guys.
All right.
Well, thanks, buddy. We appreciate it. And you have an awesome evening, and we look forward to hearing more stories from you the rest of the year and into the fall.
Thanks.
And awesome.
Very cool, man.
Dan Infalt. See, you ask, we deliver. If it recorded. And if not, it's Nick's fault. We'll beat him with, socks full of rocks later.
It's cool that Dan was gracious enough to join us. Believe it or not, I know you'd been talking to Dan before too.
Yeah.
It's funny a whole lot.
Well, I was trying to nail him down during the season, which is obviously if he did 100 sits, like nearly impossible. Yeah. Plus, I don't think he had internet yet.
It's funny, this whole podcasting thing is like, oh, so-and-so. Oh yeah, we'd like to talk to them. Oh yeah. And obviously we try to get people connected however we can. I mean, that's kind of what this whole thing is about. But believe it or not, for me, that connection also came through Jared again.
Did know some people. He's not selling that piece, is he?
No, I was just trying to help him get connected with a timber guy the other day.
He's got a spot down there.
Yeah, he needs to cut that timber. He's got a lot down there. But anyways, Jared was like, oh, I know Dan. I'll text Dan. And then Dan texted me his number. And
how funny is that?
Hopefully in the near future, we'll drop his name yet because we haven't talked to him yet. But hopefully that was a mutual connection as well. And so like, if we've grown at all in this thing, it's like we've built enough of a network here where we're kind of getting connected with some very cool people to talk to.
Well,
that's exciting.
And I mean, we kind of had a little run with Ryan Fuhrer, and last week would have been Johnny Stewart in studio, some of our Pennsylvania guys in studio. And so, the off season's tough. Couple things, if you're listening to this, I don't know if it's already out or will be out, is Jared and I recorded the first I Bought a Farm. Yep. So first episode of 2023.
I forgot to change my t-shirt. We filmed that right before this. So if I'm wearing the same thing,
I changed, so it kind of looks different. But you just changed from one
drinking
t-shirt.
The same glass of bourbon I was drinking the last time.
From one t-shirt to the other. It's literally the same one. So people wouldn't know.
The black pocket tee Carhartt.
Yeah. So, but I think I don't know how many we're gonna do of those, but
a handful for sure.
Yeah. Try to this part of the year, March to I don't know, mid-July. It's just kind of, there's a lot of things that need to happen, but it's also just, it's the off season, right? It's just trying to move. Well, we're in work mode.
It's everything that, it's the seasonality of it. It's like right now you work.
Yeah.
we just bust our butts, so that by the time September rolls around, we can bounce out of here from mule deer. And then by the time October rolls around, we can just put it behind us and,
be ready to go.
But then you pay for it every year. So it's like, man, we give 150%, for 8 months out of the year.
I told you this morning when we came. So this is actually a unique situation. Besides Nick not being here, is we're actually filming this Thursday evening. It's past my bedtime. And I've been rolling
9:05.
I've been rolling since 3:30 this morning.
Yeah.
So I'm
nice when that just kicks in.
Yeah, hit that. So, but yeah, it's we're just trying to keep things moving. But we do have we've been trying to get a little bit more consistent on our guests. We do have probably 2 guests here coming up that are some bigger names as well, that we're working on getting through maybe in the next 3 podcasts. We'll probably throw a solo in there here for us as well.
Well, really what it is some of those bigger names are free this time of year, so we're not all hunting.
Mm-hmm.
So might as well jump on a podcast.
Yeah. So keep them coming. If there's people you want us to reach out to, we will, or we'll try. Yeah. But again, just having a guy like Dan on and, just knowing his passion and, watching his videos and, I think that last point from him kind of sums it up is, I'm just Dan and you're not going to change me. I think that's probably pretty accurate.
Well said. Yeah.
World's greatest farter.
He's the man.
Anyways, episode 118 with Dan Infalt, and we will catch you all next week.
Later.
Take me